What's great about this area that's unique is these labs are named for 4 gentlemen, 2 Protestants, also a Roman Catholic and a Jewish rabbi who during World War II on the Dorchester were there as chaplains, and when a torpedo hit from a U-boat, the boat sank, and because there wasn't enough life vests to go around, they handed their life vests over to the different soldiers and sailors there. And from that courageous act, as the Dorchester went down, they were seen holding hands and singing hymns and songs together as it went down. And from that, they each were given the Medal of Honor for our country for their bravery and giving their lives for the soldiers that they had under their care.
We have over 300 military chaplains and civilian chaplains that make up what's known as the PRCC. These chaplains are serving in the military on active duty, the Guard and Reserves. We also have civilian chaplains working in hospitals, Bureau of Prison chaplains. We have VA or Veterans Administration chaplains, corporate chaplains, and a host of volunteer chaplains that are credentialed to serve with fire departments and police departments. And so this mission field is huge, and it is a growing mission field. And for me personally, I am very excited about what Christ is doing in this new harvest field that continues to grow and mature.
The biggest thing that I try to do day to day is just show up and just be present. The training sergeant has actually given me a desk at this facility. And he said, hey, I think this would be a great opportunity for you. If we put you in the training unit, all the officers have to come through. It'd be a great place for you to build relationships with officers.
Our chaplaincy program was kind of fading away. Just by happenstance, Kurt came to the police department one day on a visit, and I asked him to become a chaplain. It changed our entire staff in so much as we reinvigorated our chaplaincy crew, and we were able to get Kurt out in the field with officers.
Well, I was a police officer here in the city of Columbia for 19 years. As time went on, I just felt more and more like that a ministry to police officers, full-time professional ministry, a chaplain ministry like you have in the military, was something that I thought would be a really great thing to have for our police department, but we didn't have it.
I know as a police officer personally that when that cup gets full, you need to have a chaplain at the ready to provide that spiritual guidance and just that listening ear.
Of course, you have crisis situations. So anytime the department has a need where an officer is in trouble, an officer's seen something, or an officer needs some sort of spiritual care, they call on us for that. The piece that we're trying to develop and reimagine for the police department is how can a chaplain be a part of the day-to-day life of the police department?
Laying the groundwork beforehand, those prayer breakfasts, those ride-alongs, he's here to provide a service. So it's not out of the norm when we do need to call Kurt in for assistance. He's there to provide the support for the officers.
These people are on the front line of dealing with sin every day. We can be both used as a resource for them in their own struggles with the effect of the brokenness of this world in the police department, but also as the brokenness of the world has impacted the community, and we even have a role. How can we as chaplains bridge between the church and the community? If we have our finger on the pulse through the police department or through the fire department, really, we'll have a much better impact into our community in our churches.
The Lord is very much gathering the people to himself, even those men in prison. And some of those men will not get out. Some of them will never see until the marriage supper of the Lamb. But most of the men who are believers in Jesus Christ will be at some point among us. They will be in our churches, in our communities, serving, leading their families, leading churches. And that the work and preparation of that ministry starts inside the prison and in the chaplaincy ministry.
I feel God has gifted me in a real way to minister to people when they're going through difficult, hard times here in the hospital, whether it's in the trauma room, whether it's in ICU, whether it's in the NICU or the oncology floor, and to be able to join with a family, join with a patient, and help them connect with God and prepare for what He has for them.
Chaplain Stewart provides not only counseling, but spiritual guidance and leadership and direction, not only for patients, but also for staff and for medical staff here. And when there's a crisis in anyone's life within the hospital, it's Chaplain Stewart that they look for.
As many of you know, the ministry of the PRCC is all about our chaplains, but most of our chaplains are married, and it involves their family in the mission field. It truly is an amazing sacrifice that so many of our families go through, and specifically our chaplain spouses, as they're very much a part of this amazing ministry. And I'm very fortunate today to have with me my partner and sweetheart, Terry, who's going to share a little bit about the ministry of our chaplain spouses and the impacts that they're making as well around the world.
So when Jim first mentioned going into the chaplaincy, I was nothing less than mortified. I had no history to call upon. The only thing I could imagine was Jim running through the woods like Vietnam, being shot at. You know, it was really a scary thing for me. But as we thought about it and prayed about it over the months, Jim felt stronger inclined. I did not. So at one point, Jim very wisely came to me and said, as we evaluate this call in our lives, let's try it for 3 years. During that time, we'll pray, we'll seek God's guidance as to whether or not this is a life calling for us or not. So knowing that he felt so strongly about it, there was no way that I could say no to something he felt called by God to do. I wasn't about to put myself in that position. Having had a father who was a Presbyterian minister, marrying a Presbyterian minister, I believed that if God was calling Jim, then that call was on my life as well. So we agreed. We signed up. We got in. I was blown away at how great it was. There we were in this vast mission field, thousands of soldiers and families who did not know Jesus. Thousands of Christians in a Christian community there in the chapel system. 50 other chaplains and their families. The camaraderie, the fellowship, and the mission that we found immediately began to change my heart. And I began to love the military and, the people and what it is they do. And I knew that they deserved people like Jim to be with them and to lead them to the Lord, to pray with them, and to guide them, to counsel them in their lives. And so when the 3 years ended, Jim came to me, and he was very serious. He's very serious about his promises. So he came to me, and we were going to have a sit-down talk at the dinner table. That's where all of our serious conversations happen. And he asked if this is something we wanted to do, and I'm like, are you kidding? Don't even, just sign, yes, where are the papers? Sign the papers, we're good. So he did. 2.5 weeks later, Saddam Hussein invades Kuwait. And life took a change. But the chaplaincy, the ministry was so fulfilling, and so the difficulties of it were countered with the camaraderie, the fellowship, the joy that we had with other Christian couples and other chaplains and their families. And so it was wonderful, and it really did become a call. And as Jim said, the spouses, it was rare to ever see a chaplain's wife that was not doing everything that they could to be a part of the ministry. So many people have asked me in my journey, well, what about your children? The difficulties for your children. And one of the things that I share when I am asked that question is a story that happened right before Jim deployed. We knew he was going to be gone for 15 months, and it was going to be difficult long and difficult to go through that. And so we had a friend to call the house one afternoon, about a week before Jim left, to see how we were doing. And he asked me, he said, "What are you most concerned about?" And I said, "Bruce, honestly, it's our son, David. I know how to minister to my daughter. I can take her to the mall, give her a good foot rub. You know, I've got my girl, but I don't know how to reach out in ways that'll be meaningful to my son. You know, a mom can only shoot so many baskets before it becomes counterproductive for the little guy. You know, he's 11 at the time." And so he encouraged me not to stand in the way of something that God had clearly ordained for my son's life. And he said, "You get off the playing field. You're trying to protect David from something that God has ordained in his life. Move to the sideline, Terry, and pray for David and for his relationship with Christ, that it will grow and develop and mature as time goes on and as David goes through this experience." And so I sit here today telling you that that same young man is, as we speak, at the chaplain's basic course in Columbia, and is a Reserve Army chaplain. And so God answered those prayers. And I so appreciated that exhortation, not to try to protect my children from their Creator and from a plan that He had.
So when people say, "Thank you for your service," I would really want them to know that that service takes the Army chaplain into the cubicle, into the Humvee, into the tank, onto the airfield, in the desert, in the jungle, wherever we happen to find ourselves, shoulder to shoulder with soldiers. And those are opportunities that only military chaplains can have.
I got a call from my commander in the middle of the night. He said, "Chaplain, you need to be at this apartment in the city." He said there's a soldier that's hanging on the balcony. He was telling everybody I'm jumping up. It was 10th floor of the apartment. As soon as I got there, I just got through the crowd. And as soon as he saw me, he knew me. I was able to save him from there. And I felt that, wow, this is why I need to be here.
The United States Army, and really all of the military, is a legitimate mission field simply because of the need. The military reflects our culture. Our culture is becoming increasingly secular, and so there is a huge need for the gospel with those who are lost, and there's also a huge need for those who profess to be Christians as far as discipleship goes, because serving in the military is a very demanding lifestyle.
The exciting part is just that you are a pastor amongst your people. Commanders rely on you to help take care of soldiers and their families for their spiritual needs, their family needs, whatever needs they have, they expect the chaplain to be a part of that, both in a counseling setting and from the pulpit.
There are concerns that has the chaplaincy really prepared you for civilian pastoral ministry? I would say incredibly so. We take the term incarnational ministry very seriously. It's not simply me speaking to a congregation that's all from the same community. We are constantly having to relearn language. We're constantly putting ourselves where we are the newbie. And so I've had to learn to pray prayers in pilot lingo, and all of a sudden they start to get it when I'm saying God is the one who enables the physics to work so that the plane flies and makes your body able to work so that you can fly it. And I start using that Reformed theology everywhere when I pray for people to have a good jump before they jump out of a perfectly good airplane. And I'm talking about, you are the master of the winds. So we're bringing in Psalms and everything. It's always incarnating a Reformed concept, a theological concept wherever they are. You bring it to a staff meeting, and I've talked about the importance of truth when commanders are pulling out their hair and they're saying, We just have to teach them to do what's right, and you're the lone person in the room saying that's not enough because they have defined what's right in their own eyes. So I pull that right out of Judges. And then you talk about not doing things in your own strength when they've come to the end of themselves. And I've seen lieutenant colonels and colonels literally just broken, and they're the leader. You're talking to them about Christ and redemption, that God can even forgive this. He can change you. He really can do this, that He understands suffering, and He will change your heart if you will trust in Him and stop relying on your rank, because in the military culture, we get caught up in achievement and accomplishment, and guess what? None of that works at the foot of the cross.
They're men of character, they're men of commitment, but they're also men of courage. And their courage allows them to stand boldly serving Christ in very challenging and difficult locations. Your prayer support empowers them to live out their calling. Your financial support, it allows this ministry to continue. It allows our ministry to shepherd those shepherds, to minister to those shepherds. It allows our ministry to send quality Christ-centered reform materials into the field so that our chaplains can distribute to our soldiers, our sailors, our airmen, our Marines, as well as patients in hospital, our prisoners in jail. One of the ways that you can also help and support our ministry is to also adopt or sponsor a chaplain. You will serve this chaplain by praying for him and his family. You'll have him come and visit your church and speak at your missions conference. If he is deployed, you will bring his family to your church and minister to them and allow them to write you letters once or twice a year, updating you on their work. They truly are missionaries around the world. So I strongly encourage you to please adopt or sponsor one of our chaplains. I'd be remiss today if I didn't pause and thank our commissioners who make up the PRCC and their prayer for this amazing ministry and their devotion. And I would certainly be remiss if I didn't thank our staff, Matt Griffith, who is my associate endorser for military ministry, and his wife, Chris, Mike Stewart, and what Mike is doing as our associate endorser for civilian chaplaincy, and for what he and his wife, Jerry, are doing. And then finally, we all know the rock of our ministry, and that is Gary Hitzfeld, who's my administrative director, and his wife, Diane. We are so thankful for this staff and for their commitment. And so I would encourage you, if you're thinking about this ministry, listen to the heart of God if He's leading you, and please contact us for His glory. Thank you.